welcome to the Badger Politics. I'm Scott Stearns.
My name's Paul Sickle. Welcome.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, Scott. I think that you should go on vacation more often, though, because we've been between the last podcast and this, we were able to stop the monstrosity of a healthcare bill, at least for now.
Yeah, so I guess when tax reform comes up, I'll have to find somewhere to go.
You got to bail.
I do. I am going to Vegas in October, so maybe it'll coincide.
There you go. Well, you should just spend all of your anticipated tax refunds. It'll be really ruinous for you, but it'll be great for
the country as a whole.
The country, right?
Awesome.
Right. Assuming you're betting on you being a big winner in the Trump tax.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what the details look like. But before we get there, obviously, the healthcare bill went down to defeat in the Senate. They pulled out all the stops and they passed they had votes on multiple amendments to get something done. They had the version essentially that the Senate had come up with that failed, and then they had the skinny repeal. Which was basically just a shell of a bill. It was just all it was going to do was repeal the individual mandate and a couple of the taxes.
And the last time we did this, we knew that it was going to come to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We gamed it out, and we saw that pretty clearly. And we were saying, keep the pressure up.
Yep.
So that was one thing we said that was right.
Yeah. Well,
the pressure stayed up, and somehow John McCain, who really wasn't even the target, decided to issue a thumbs down.
Yeah, it was our friend Dean Heller did not come through, and there was some others that were on the fence that didn't step up. So it really was John McCain. He saved the party. He took one for the team. I guess. I think there was probably some other senators that would have maybe if they had a few more ounces of courage.
Party?
Well, because I think it's bad strategy. If they were to pass this thing, I don't think it would bode well for their electoral chances. Once some of their own voters would be cut off of Medicaid, or they would lose their coverage because they could no longer be on their parents' plan. What have you.
Yeah, but what about then? You could at least make people less dependent on the government program, and then not see government in the long run. Government as good.
Right.
That was, that's the whole strategy behind, or the whole rationale behind the strategy, which is that you have, on the right, is that you have to stop large expansion of government provision, redistribution, so to speak, which Obamacare really does do. It is a redistributive thing.
Sure.
Which I don't think a lot of progressives really ever understood until just now.
Well,
during this debate.
Insurance as a concept is a redistributive thing because we all pay into a pool, and then whoever gets sick gets to pull money out of the pool.
Right, but the biggest thing was under Obamacare, the healthy and the wealthy paid more.
Yes, and
those who were less healthy or wealthy received more. Were able to receive more. Mm-hmm. In truth, it probably stabilized markets because you had guaranteed sources of funding, which is what this whole thing was about to do away with.
Yeah,
was the guaranteed sources of funding, which would have made the markets probably go pretty haywire.
Yeah, and that's we're still not out of the woods on that. Obviously, all the talk about letting Obamacare implode, and that's still a thing that's out there. Now, I think there's some Republicans,
but that's not letting it implode. It's actually undermining. The laws.
Oh, absolutely.
If you actually just follow the law as it's intended to be,
right?
I think that the markets stay relatively stable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just that they're monkeying with the concept that maybe we won't do the funding that we need to. We're not going to. I mean, it's going to be interesting come open enrollment time how the Donald Trump Health and Human Services Department handles that.
Well, all indications are they're going to push away from promoting it.
Yeah, well, yeah, they've already canceled, or they canceled advertising last time around, right. And I would expect they'll do next to nothing next go around. They'll have
the uptake rate will go down.
Yeah, and then they'll say, "Oh, see, enthusiasm down. Nobody wants this horrible healthcare."
And the number of insureds then will drop simply because people are making bad consumer choices because they're not being educated The question here is, so there's a lot of foundations and progressive groups that funded, a lot of the, I don't want to say they funded most of the resistance, because most of the resistance was really kind of spontaneous, but they helped seed it. Sure. They helped, back it up. They were going to try to promote, they had resources, they were going to try to promote fixes and improvements had Hillary won, or at least keep it, a steady level. And instead it went into defense. But it suddenly made a lot more people appreciate the law for what it is. So now that the law is more appreciation, the ACA that is, the question is, will these foundations, like Kaiser or Family Foundation, Families USA, that's actually a group that receives, I believe, a delegate agency of these grantees. Will they fund education on their own?
Perhaps. I mean, we'll have to see what happens. But
if you fund consumer education about the law, whether or not the government's providing that funding, I mean, that might be a worthwhile thing.
Yeah.
Just like there's, a lot of times in states like Wisconsin, they don't, encourage you to know that you can get food stamps. So sometimes private foundations get involved in funding information campaigns about where there's food stamp, how people can be eligible for food stamps. Maybe this is something labor ought to be participating in. Not that labor has that many resources, but which they really don't. And if the GOP has any control over it, they will have none pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's definitely, there could be an answer to the lack of promotion they may do down the road here. I mean, I guess the bigger concern is shortening the enrollment period, which they can do. And they can shorten it down to 30 days. I don't know. I have to check the statutes to see how restrictive they can be.
I would like to see the disease groups, and these are groups that are funded by things like these marathons or 5Ks. On breast cancer, heart disease, you name it. I'd like to see them actually put a little skin in the game and actively promoting the open enrollment period.
Sure.
And get more people on it. Make sure that people stay on it and know they can.
Well, they have the list. They've got they are actively they have a number of people that they can reach out to.
Well, they also raise lots of money in their 5Ks and their things like that. And they could simply put some of that into a marketing campaign. And this might be a time to even do some deficit spending a little bit. Maybe you didn't raise that much at your leukemia walk this year. But it's time to, or the ALS, the Ice Bucket Challenge and all that. It's time to put some of that money into an information campaign, so that right now, when the goal is to get people out of the markets, so as to destabilize it from the Trump perspective, to have a reverse campaign seizing on the momentum that actually the healthcare law has now in the popular imagination, and making sure that as many people who are eligible actually do sign up on healthcare.gov for 2018.
Well, I think
that will make it much harder to repeal it in the future.
Yes, and any organization I think that actively came out against the effort that they were trying to put forth, I think they really should step up and as you said, put their skin in the game, whether it be the AMA, American Medical Association, the Hospital Association, like all those. Because
waiting for the next time John McCain shows up with a thumbs down, is probably not a good bet.
No, especially
considering his conditions.
Yes. It's looking pretty serious. He's undergoing treatment now, and it's a very aggressive form of cancer. We don't really know what the end game is.
Well, I don't think we need to lionize McCain any more here than has already been done. We all know what happened. That McCain had a moment of courage or conscience. Apparently, a lot of other Republicans did want to vote no, but they didn't have the guts to do so.
Lindsey Graham, Ron Johnson.
Those guys weren't lobbying him too hard, I noticed, on the floor, so he might have been just told them, look, guys, all right, fine, if you got to vote for this shithole, I won't, and that'll be 51.
Yeah, and that'll be enough. Then nobody else has to stick their neck out.
And give plenty of credit to Murkowski and Collins.
Absolutely.
We were always credited.
Absolutely.
And
they were there the whole time,
exactly,
from the get go, saying, this is our line in the sand. If you're not going to do anything about the Medicaid funding, if the Planned Parenthood funding thing isn't going to change, then that's it's not going to work for us.
And Murkowski kept saying, apparently, in back channels, that she was getting a lot of pressure from the right.
Oh yeah,
late in the game, and that the resistance people had really not kept their message as high pitched as needed to be, for most of the summer.
And obviously, from a state like Alaska, it's definitely more politically risky for someone like her than it would be for Susan Collins. And Maine is, generally a blue state, although it did elect Governor LePage, and so
right. Well, Alaska is one of those weird red states that's not like as nearly it's just not as deeply red though. It's broadly red, but not deeply red. It's
not the socially conservative state like you find,
right,
in the rest of
it's
the
got
country.
A little bit of the Pacific Northwest going, like ethic up there.
It's kind of a libertarian, kind of Western,
right?
feel.
It's kind of like Wyoming plus Oregon, and then split the difference, and then you're, it's not exactly the most ideologically easily placed state.
No, it's definitely unique, both in terms of geography and political culture.
So speaking of waiting on, McCain or whoever for the next thumbs down, we have these elections coming up.
Yeah.
One of the things that could happen, if you look at the map, is even with a good year for the Democrats or natural kind of bounce back against opposing parties, the president's opposing party.
Yeah.
A natural sort of bounce back, which we've seen on almost every midterm cycle, really going back into the Reagan era at least. Actually, I think it goes back to the 60s. But let's assume that happens. There's still a really good chance that the Republicans will actually still gain seats.
Yeah, well, they have a lot more. Democrats have a lot more seats to defend. So,
and this is in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, the Senate map is really bad next year. So the Democrats right now have 48 seats. Next year in 2018, they have to defend 25 of those seats. Republicans have to defend just 8 out of their 52. Mm-hmm. And it's just there's a number of those states that are states that went for Trump,
right, and some quite heavily.
Yeah.
I mean, the argument. So if you read 538.com, which we often talk about, I know it's a little lazy of us not to do our own research and rely on. But it is a really well-sourced website.
Why reinvent the wheel?
And frankly, even though they said Hillary had a 68% chance of winning last fall,
she did win the popular vote. So.
Right. They were one of the few groups to actually say that Trump had better than a 5% chance of winning. So let's remember that.
Yeah.
They're saying, I read somewhere there that they thought the Democrats could have a typical midterm election bounce and still lose about 5 Senate seats.
Yeah.
And so that means the Democrats would go from 48, that's including the 2 independents, down to 43.
Yeah.
Which would then mean the Republicans would almost certainly have the votes to pass some major repeal.
Yeah. And so that needs to be a big campaign plank, I think, next year. If they're going to have any kind of national message, if you were worried about health care with a 4-seat margin in the Senate, then think what it would be like if it's 57 to 43.
The only way it works out is if Indiana, which is probably one of the first to go, North Dakota, suddenly just elect a bunch of Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski's. My guess is that it won't happen.
Right.
Now Heller did make himself vulnerable, so that could actually reverse one of the seats in Nevada, but I still think the Republicans that would still leave them with at least a 4-seat gain.
Jeff Flake is one to watch, I think. His approval rating right now is like 18%. So
he's one to watch. Okay,
they need to find. I don't know.
It's still a pretty red state, though.
It is, but I don't. I mean, it's one of those states I think that could trend.
In fairness, you got to keep an eye on Tammy Baldwin,
you do.
Debbie Stabenow.
Yes.
From Michigan, Bob Casey from Pennsylvania.
You can't take those states for granted, as we learned. As we learned,
I just listed the big three that went.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin.
Right. None of them are in the bag.
No. Nothing's in the bag.
The trend would suggest that you'd have enough of a rebound in those three states to probably bring the Senate seats back. But would you get all three? Maybe you get 2 out of 3.
I don't know.
You got to keep all 3 and then some.
Well, if they can't defend those seats, then they will have a really long night.
Well, what if they could defend 2 out of 3? What if, say, Casey and Stabenow win, but Baldwin loses?
But if you can't defend Tammy Baldwin, then what are your chances of?
I mean, they're going after her.
Of course they will. But
this is not a joke.
But you can't. I don't think you can depend on winning West Virginia.
Well, I'm not saying you're gonna. Right. I guess I'm not saying they're going to win a majority. The Democrats have a chance at a majority. I'm saying that the question is how many seats can they keep the losses?
I'm saying I think you have to. I think you have to run the table on those 3 if you're going to have at least a decent night in the Senate. Which I guess.
What's a decent night for you?
I guess we'd have to dive into each individual state, but I mean I don't think you can plan on holding all of them. You're going to lose at least a few.
I'm going to put my over-under at about 44. I'm going to say 45 plus is a good night. I think if they did everything right, they should get 46 or 47 at least.
Yeah. That's a good night.
I don't think that they gain short of a really strong wave. There's no way to really gain seats for the Democrats right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, unless they picked up
by a net gain, that is. I mean, they might win one from Heller, but they're going to lose. Like you got Indiana, North Dakota, Montana, Wisconsin. I mean, all these Trump states that went. So I think that's one of the issues. Like you said, I think those 3 are probably protectable.
Yeah.
But I think that also then the governor races, because people, and that brings us right back here in Wisconsin, that it's not just about protecting Baldwin, it's about trying to get rid of Walker.
Yep.
And if you don't have a robust campaign to get rid of Walker, and Walker stomps through this thing, then that hurts Baldwin.
It does, because it's gonna drive Democratic turnout down.
Yeah.
If we don't have a competitive campaign,
people very much now, they don't ticket split. They used to ticket split. It looks like in Wisconsin. We're just looking at a chart that I drew up. I mean, there was a lot more ticket splitting even back into about 2002, 2006.
Yeah, I mean,
it's over in Wisconsin.
No, I mean, going back to the 90s. I mean, you used to have people that would, they'd vote for Tommy Thompson for governor, and then they'd vote for Jim Doyle for attorney general. Maybe they'd vote for Feingold
or Herb Kohl.
Right. It's that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that era is largely over. I mean,
it is.
There's a fraction of voters that vote in that way. They vote based on personality, or somebody appears more independent than the rest.
So
of the
I
pack.
I think the governor's race is going to be really important. I'm not sure he'll get rid of Walker, although I do think that there's no way to run except to try to go all out and try to beat him. I don't think we want another Mary Burke or a Tom Barrett or We've got some really exciting people though now running. We like
Dana Walks.
He looks like a good old 46%er.
Yeah,
I think he's Tom Barrett North. My goodness! And then Captain Excitement himself, Tony Evers, is in it as well.
Yeah,
and we got a good Madison liberal, Calder Roy's now saying she's going to run, and we got Kathleen Vinehout, who got 4% last time she ran for governor primary.
Only one way to go, and that's up, right?
We got. I don't know about any of these guys, Scott. I'm not sure any of these I'm not sure they make the C list. I mean, Kathy Griffin. I know we can't talk about Kathy Griffin these days. She's kind of verboten, right? But we got Walker was the A list, and Feingold used to be the A list, but now he's been demoted to the B list. I think on a good day. I guess Herb Kohl is too old though, so he's off the list.
Yeah, I don't think that's happened.
Tom Barrett he's not even a B-lister. He's not running again. But he would be there you go. Jim Doyle, you were saying. But a Dana Wachs is just, I started watching his thing. I started snoozing about a quarter of the way through his introduction video.
I did watch a little bit of it, and I did not.
This is our guy? Really? I'm just dumbfounded.
Well, it's early. We got to give some of these folks a chance to obviously put themselves out there.
To try to make the C list?
Maybe.
Yeah, I could see him. I guess he's fluent in English, so that's good.
Well, that's not really necessarily a qualification anymore.
Yeah, right. But it maybe gives him an advantage.
In some cases, the more slang you use these days, it might make you more competitive.
He's spoken in pleasant enough terms about making a better state. But
yeah.
It sounds like every time we run against Walker, we get 46%.
Yeah.
He sounds like he'd be fortunate to get 46%. Vinehout probably be fortunate to get about 44%. And I don't know. Actually, Vinehout might have more than he does, honestly.
I think, of the announced candidates, I would say just...
The insiders really like Wachs. They don't like Vinehout.
Why? Why is that?
Well, Vinehout has a history of not being terribly impressive in building organization.
Okay.
And she really was underwhelming in that Democratic primary for the recall.
Right.
But she seems to inspire a certain level of resistance people, like kind of some of the indivisible people. But I think she's really kind of a nerd's nerd. Like, she's not like a Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And Wachs isn't either, as far as I'm concerned. And, like I was saying about Wachs, it's sort of like, we know Tony Evers. Tony Evers is a very interesting man, and Dana Wachs, you're no Captain Excitement like Tony Evers, and that's really says it all.
Well, Tony at least has won a statewide election,
right? At least Evers,
which is more than you can say for some of these other folks.
Yeah, so I think we got to keep looking for new champions.
Yeah,
so.
Well, there's still time. I don't think the field is set by any means.
The time's running low.
Well, if you're going to get resources and start hiring, the right people that are going to build a solid campaign for you, now's the time to get in.
And so, which brings us right back here to Southeast Wisconsin. Randy Bryce. That guy should have run for governor.
Yeah, you think he chose the wrong race?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think he's going to run a hell of a campaign. But I still think it'd be really hard to knock off Ryan, just given the DPI, or the PVI of the district is still more conservative than the state as a whole, only by a couple points, but in close elections that really matters. And so I think that Bryce would be imminently electable statewide against a Walker.
Yeah.
And yes, the contrast against Ryan is perfect. And the cat's out, train's already left the station. There's no going back now. But I really wish Bryce was running for governor. We need something along those lines.
Yeah, I think if he can be at least competitive, if he isn't able to win the seat, if he can make it a competitive election for the first time in many years for that district, then I think he's got a future ahead of him. Maybe
that'll help with Baldwin.
Maybe he can run for governor in 2020 or 2022.
That's true. There you go. That will help with Baldwin, and it will help with the governor's race too, because that's where some of the worst drop off from Obama to Clinton was in that Southeast Wisconsin district.
Well, and that's Ryan's district, which is what supposedly where the Foxconn plant is going to be built in.
There you go, $3 billion.
Yeah, how about that?
That's a lot of money.
How much money per job is that?
Yeah, well, using their highest estimate of 13,000 jobs,
right?
It comes out to, the last I heard was about 250,000 a job. If we were to subsidize, at $250,000 a job, that's how we built our job creation strategy. The state would go broke before we get to past lower than 50% unemployment. I mean, it really would be that bad.
So $3 billion is what they're looking for
Mm-hmm.
to get this deal done. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
$230,796.23 per job is what they're talking about subsidizing. Now, that is a hell of a lot higher rate per job than, say, the Bucks Arena is.
Yeah.
And the Bucks Arena has provisions that the jobs have to be good paying jobs, that you have to have local hires.
You could build like 12 Bucks arenas, I think, for what the money that they're looking for.
Right. I mean, and they're saying, it's going to be 10 times the size of the Lambeau Field. Well, that's great, but where's this $3 billion coming from?
I guess just magic money.
I mean, wow.
Yeah.
So just, in comparison, if my memory serves me correctly, every year the state gives about $1 billion to the entire UW system.
Yeah.
And let's be fair. Let's take the $3 billion over a 15-year period, because that's what they're talking. That's $200 million a year.
Yeah.
So they're talking about.
That's almost a new Miller Park every year. The price tag on that was $250
every single year.
Yeah.
Right. So $200 million, though, is 1/5 of what the state gives to the UW system. The UW system educates about 250,000 students a year. Those people get job skills. Those people contribute to the economy. It hires
start businesses.
Teachers. Yes. Basically, the metric I heard was that $3 billion put into education could immediately hire 86,000 educators.
Yeah. No.
I mean that's. But here we're going to give it to one company from Southeast Asia, from China.
Yeah, how much bad shit did we hear about China in the last election?
I mean, this company has suicide nets built
They
outside.
do.
I mean, my biggest fear is we do this. Let's say we go ahead and do this. Let's say they even go to their fullest potential. Mm-hmm. Two things I think happen. One is your Amazons around there, the people who already have invested without getting $3 billion in subsidies,
right?
Start saying, okay, well, we're not going to build in this area because all the land's getting bought up. It's too expensive, and all the workers in this particular region are being taken up, probably. So that's kind of a good thing, except they're not going to actually make that many jobs, so maybe that wouldn't be the biggest problem. But the land and, the costs, it'll be something to compete against just in terms of resources to build there. But the second thing is, if I'm Amazon, or worse yet, what if I'm Miller Coors?
Yeah. Harley Davidson.
Johnson Controls. I'm here. I've been here in the community for maybe a century or more, and I've never gotten $3 billion from my own state.
Right.
Why don't I just say, you know what? I'm gonna sell my brewery to Anheuser-Busch. We're gonna move out all down to Missouri.
Where's mine?
Unless you give us $3 billion to keep brewing beer here in Milwaukee.
Yep.
Or whatever the equivalent would be, $600 million, because it's only, they only employ a couple thousand people there.
Right.
Or what if, Georgia Pacific does? I mean, the one people who got it right were the Americans for Prosperity, who say no.
Yeah.
And of course that's the Koch brothers, but they own they own like Georgia Pacific, huge paper mills in the Green Bay area. What Kimberly Clark, Oshkosh Truck, all these huge employers in the state.
Yeah.
None of them have ever gotten anything close to $3 billion from the state.
Well, huge employers, much less small employers. I mean, what if you're a family business and you've never asked for much? You want, obviously you want a decent road that will take will get people to your business. You want you pay your fair share. You pay your workers. What's fair about this? I mean,
If I'm them, I start knocking on the doors of Iowa and Minnesota and say, well, Wisconsin's too busy giving their money to a Chinese company that has no track record of delivering at all. Mm-hmm. I've been producing things here for decades or a century.
Yeah.
And I can't. I've been paying the taxes. Yeah. Now I'm going to have to pay more taxes to subsidize this other company. Why don't you guys give me half the subsidy? I'll move over to Iowa.
There you go.
And I think that's a real risk. Yeah. This isn't just a hypothetical. I think that's exactly the kind of thing that's going to happen. It's the Me Tooism.
It sounds like a potential issue that could be raised in a campaign for governor.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this idea is that it's going to make him more electable. But I think what it really shows is that he's very careless with the state's finances.
Yeah, which has been one of his strengths. Going back to when he was county executive, he was viewed as a good steward of
boondoggles,
property taxes, and
no boondoggles,
right.
like the train to Madison, which actually was going to create jobs.
Yep. Well, and we can barely afford the roads. They still haven't figured out how to pay for the road projects that we have.
That zoo interchange, which Walker used as an issue in 2010 against Tom Barrett. And now, several delays later, it's not going to be completed until sometime in the third or fourth Walker term, right? Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Marquette interchange was done in 4 years under budget and sooner than scheduled when Jim Doyle was coming.
But Scott, one thing that I do think is right. I mean, we're looking at all this data, like when do we win, when do we lose? One way, though, to beat an incumbent is to take his strength
and make it his weakness.
I think that is something that really is an opportunity for us. If it's used appropriately. Make this something they have to answer for.
Yeah.
Why are we rushing to spend all this money that we clearly don't have?
Yeah. Well, apparently not.
Or if we do have, you and I have it, we just haven't paid it. We just haven't paid it in taxes yet. It hasn't. Right. Our taxes haven't been raised to pay for it yet.
Yeah.
So, or our schools haven't been cut.
Not yet.
There you go. All right. Well, with that, we'll be talking more about Foxconn, I assume, and health policy as well.
Yeah, I mean there'll be more to come on healthcare. I don't think it's dead, but maybe anything that happens going forward is hopefully something around shoring up the markets and make the consumer confidence.
Hopefully, it does move us forward.
Move us forward.